Alright everyone, we have a team battle. It's going to be 3v3 Gunslinger, DS taking on DG. First for DG is Zeeta, who is using Spike Brothers, and NeoBuster, who is using uh, Narukami. It's going to be a showcase of members that are technically new. Haven't been able to do much because they've been away and busy for the last few weeks. Coming back now. So we have to see what, so we'll see what they can do. Zeeta start with the medical manager. Soul Charger Dragger. Meanwhile, NeoBuster has Mighty Bolt. And we have a no pass guard. And it was a good guard because critical trigger appeared. So on grade 2, we see Jumbo the stun gun. What? This card is put during your battle phase. When this unit is placed in the rear guard circle, soul charge 1 and unflip 1. What? Is that an elephant? I didn't know that existed. Holy shit. And the starter is Smart Leader, Darkbringer. Its ability, if its attack hits, he can put it into Zeeta can put it into the soul in order to call any Spike Brother from his hand, no matter what grade. Zeeta no guards. And we get a Dragon Dancer Stormy. If I remember right, when a unit's retired, that card can either gain 3k or give 3k to a unit by soul charging. I think it said it gain soul blasting. I think it gains 3k itself. So we have Zeeta riding Bloody Ogre. Drive check the Deadly Emperor and a critical. Gets a trigger to counter it. And that's a new trigger, the new Eradicator critical. When a rear guard is put to the drop zone from the rear guard due to an effect from one of your cards, look at the top 3 cards. Look at 3 cards from the top of your deck, search for one with Eradicator in its name, reveal it to your opponent, put it into your hand. Return this to the deck and shuffle. Oh, that's a good card. So now he rides Dragonic Vanquisher, not an Eradicator. So is he gonna stride? If he does, he can use the stride. He can use the heartbeat skill to retire that starter and bind it so it can't be used to Legion. And that's exactly what's going to happen. So Counterblast 1 for Vanquisher. Please do it. He retires and it gets bound. And that unit is never going to be unbound. Keep in mind, the Narukami's bind units and never get them out of that space. And this starter gains 3,000 power because the unit was just put into the bind. So now a 32,000 attack, and he perfect guards because he would lose a lot more from the drop if he let that hit. He gets a heal trigger, gets the heal and give power to that unit, and gets another heal trigger. Still goes off, and gets to put heal to the Stormy again. So the damage evened up. And Zeeta can't Legion. He decides to ride. He could have actually discarded that to use Stride instead. But I guess he's confident that he can last long enough to utilize Break Ride. Gets a critical trigger. And so does NeoBuster. If I was NeoBuster, I'd give the power to Stormy. And he's going straight for the Vanguard instead. So he was right to give it to the Vanguard. Takes the damage anyway. I'm curious as to what his deck does to retire units during So he can do another stride. If I was him, I would actually stride into Zorus again. Because Conquest Dragon, while it is good, it wouldn't help as much here. Okay, so instead of doing stride, I don't know if he can or not, he uses the skill of Voltage Horn Dragon. It allows him to retire a unit, and because the unit is retired, the Stormies gain 3,000 power. These don't do it by a Soul Blast. I was thinking of a different unit, actually. Vanquisher does not gain 3,000 power in a crit because that's a Generation Break skill. A Generation Break 2. He would have to do at least one more stride in order to get that. But the Stormies do get power. Because the unit was put into the drop zone before it was bound. So that should be a 9k unit. It should now be a 14k unit. Which would have changed the guard. Zeeta heal triggers, so he's not going to get Break Ride this turn. And now Zeeta's going to use Stride to try to get an attack in. NeoBuster technically doesn't have to guard. I would guard if I was him, though. And he doesn't. Only a draw trigger appears in a triple check. So now NeoBuster is completely aware that if he wants his Generation Break skill, he has to Stride again. And Zeeta is... If I was NeoBuster, I would have done another stride, because he wants the Generation Break 2 skill. It's obvious he wants the Generation Break 2 skill by this point. Even if it was into Zorus, it would have been good to do another stride, but Now we have a break rod from Zeeta. He's gonna Legion, and he's gonna try to end it this turn. He saved his hand so he could end it on this turn. Going as far as to calling critical triggers. Because why not? They're going to gain power and go back to the deck anyway. $19,000 on its own because of Break Right and Legion skill combined. They do go to the bottom though. Activating Legion skill brings out a Frozen Ogre. After it attacks, it'll be able to go to Counterblast 1 and go into the soul and get out another unit. So we can just keep attacking until NeoBuster runs out of guard. And keep in mind at the end of it all that Bad End Dragger has an attack as well. NeoBuster uses a perfect guard, decides to drop the Dragonic Vanquisher. Very smart idea because it allows him to keep the guard for later. Giving critical trigger to Frozen Ogre. Gives a draw trigger to the Bad End Dragger. Sort of a misplay, in my opinion, because he could have given all of the power to one side. That is too critical, so NeoBuster has no choice but to guard. And now for a Counterblast 1 and putting it into the soul, he can get out another Frozen Ogre and continue a loop. And that's the third. He only has one more after this. So if NeoBuster can guard this next attack, he can actually win on the next turn. And DC. Well, you have to figure out what happens there. Unfortunately, my internet was the one that cut out, so I couldn't see the end of the fight. But unfortunately, NeoBuster wasn't able to guard all of it, so he did lose the match. Guy will be next, so good game. Moving on to the next one.